All right, thanks for being here this morning. Just to give you a little inside baseball look, we have been reaching out to law enforcement, and they've been very, very kind in responding to us about getting information about what they're doing and how they're doing it. And joining us in studio is Chief Ken Koss from the Mesa Police Department. Chief, thanks for doing this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
You know, it's and I want to say thank you because I know it's not something that has always been the way it is with a really good line of communication with the media. But I think a lot of what you're doing is important for people to hear, the work you're doing behind the scenes and the stuff that they see. So I appreciate the update.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about your Operation Safe Summer. Obviously, the teen violence that became a national story. And their accusation is a strong word, but I think it's accurate in some cases that police were kind of behind the curve on this, that they were not in front of what was an obvious thing that was going on. Do you think that was a fair assessment?
No, because teen violence has always been an issue, and it's something that wasn't new. It obviously got brought to the forefront by the tragedy in Queen Creek. And any attention is great attention when it's a community issue like teen violence, with the increase in violence, increase in guns, increase in gun crime, all those things that have been happening in our communities really got the attention with that tragic event. And this is an opportunity for us to let the community know, well, this is what we're doing behind the scenes to deal with what we're seeing.
And when you see an uptick in something like this, a lot of it, maybe I'm wrong, I'm guessing, is messaging that when you start letting people know this is something we are enforcing, it's like almost like when they do click it or ticket on holiday weekends or DUI task forces on holiday weekends, letting people know we are paying very, very close attention to this. Is that kind of what you're doing with these programs, letting these teenagers and their parents know that there is a spotlight on you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's some that might even be sick of seeing from the Mesa Police Department that we're going to enforce curfew. And they see it over and over again. It's our posts. It's what's going out. But curfew leads to violence, and teens out after hours, they're not doing anything great. They're going to parties, they're bringing guns to parties. They're things that we need to intercept and deal with that deal with teen violence.
See, I'm not making light of this, but I just now remember what a horrible teenager I was for my mom to deal with, because my mom used to say nothing good happens after 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I used to say everything good happens after 10 o'clock. As a teenager, whatever that is about being out late. But you're right, in this situation, bad things happen after curfew, which is why we're protecting kids from themselves sometimes.
Right, absolutely. I mean, you just look at some of the things that we were able to accomplish with our men and women out there collaborating. We have these stops that are curfew related that we end up pulling guns off of kids with 30-round magazines and fully automatic Glock switches and things like that. What are you doing at 2:30 in the morning, being a 15-year-old, loaded into a vehicle with a gun? And, we've seen that type of those events happen before. So when we implemented this program, and I'm sure we'll talk about the results, it was really that focus of let's intervene before things even happen. And that's the kind of things that we saw, whether it's seizing guns off kids in a traffic stop or getting intelligence that there's going to be a party, here's where the party's going to be, here's who's hosting it, and us breaking that party up before it ever even happens.
Mesa Police Chief Ken Koss is joining us talking about teen violence and the response from not just the Mesa Police Department, but this coalition of the East Valley police agencies as well. When you talk about guns in this, I think there are a lot of times, genuinely, you've got good parents where kids are really good at hiding some of their behaviors. But other times, parents need to know or should have known what their kids are involved with. When you've got a teenager with a gun, nothing good comes from that. They don't understand sometimes the consequences of their actions and behaviors. And can you talk about the results of this and what you're finding with these kids when you were intently looking for this?
So when we started the program, our teen violence spike, we just had a visual, which we'll provide to the show. You can see that right when school gets out, there's a spike of violence because that violence that was happening in or around the schools is usually accentuated over the weekends. So once we implemented this program, we started making arrests for not just curfew, but for alcohol violations, for guns, for aggravated assault, all these different things. We saw a reduction in 40% reduction in violent crime within the first month of us implementing that, and that stayed steady through the summer. So we're talking 22 less incidents than would have happened before had we not implemented this program.
Does the message get through to a lot of these young people once do they realize the seriousness when they see how heavy you come down on them? Is it changing the course of their action? Are you rerouting their behavior to something more positive?
There's no question it's making an impact because we just through our intelligence, whether we're monitoring social media, whether we're looking at text messages, those type of things, we definitely can see that the kids are talking. Like if you're going to go to Mesa, you got to be careful because they're out in force. You got to watch out because they're looking for you and those type of things. And that's a good thing. We want them to be in that mindset because we are out looking for you. We are going to hold you accountable if you're going to go out and commit these kind of crimes.
And then again, it's also a part of being a kid is that I don't want to use the word dumb enough, but they are still in that mindset where they're putting these things on social media. And that for a while, that was a big part of this. It wasn't just that they were doing these things. They were videotaping it and then putting it up on social media, which again, it added to the kind of notoriety with their friends, but it also gave you an opportunity with evidence to go after people, right?
Yeah, and the call to action, and of course we're all parents, and it's a tough job, but the call to action is for the parents. You've got to be nosy in those situations because there's a lot of times where these kids are taking pictures with their guns. They're throwing up gang signs. They're doing things on social media that is right there for the parent to see and to step in on, or a guardian or whoever, a coach, a teacher, to step in and do something about that. And we need more of that proactive activity.
How do you differentiate between a kid that's throwing up gang signs and pretending to be a tough guy or a tough girl versus someone who is actually involved in that life? How do you tell the difference?
Well, it's almost impossible to tell the difference if they're throwing up gang signs that are legitimate. If they're posting, whether it's colors, whether it's a symbol of the actual gang, that's really dangerous for them if they're not in that gang. So there is almost no difference. You've identified yourself as being part of that, whether you truly are or not. And so it's dangerous in a bunch of ways.
All right, so if we can have you for one more segment, I'd like to talk to you about is then parental responsibility and if parents are being held accountable, and also the use of technology and how you're able to use that in some of these instances. So we've got Chief Ken Koss with us. A big thank you to everybody listening in the town of Buckeye. If you're out west in Buckeye, thanks for listening this hour. Coming up, one more segment with the Chief. Stick around. All right, we are talking with Chief Ken Koss from the Mesa Police Department. I want to talk about parental responsibility because there is a very fine line here. I think that most parents are diligent and that you can be a good parent with a kid that still does bad things. And so holding a parent responsible for that might be difficult. But there also is a line where a parent is responsible for their child's behavior and sometimes they should know better. How do you address that?
Well, I mean, in some cases, it could be that you're contributing to even a crime, right? So if you are naive to the fact that you should keep your guns locked up, you shouldn't allow your kids to have access to guns because it's against the law. You shouldn't, be careless with those type of things. You could eventually be held liable, even on a criminal sense, for that, on the most serious end. And even as we talk about curfew, right? Like in the city of Mesa, if you're a parent and you allow your kid out after curfew, then you're going to go to court as well. And so it's just being aware of what your kids are doing, and having those talks with them on why you're doing it. And I know it's really, really hard to do, but it could be something on the minor end to a curfew, but it also could be something on the major end, even with being careless about your firearms.
And wanting to be the cool parent that's allowing the party at your house. I mean, that just seems like such a dumb thing to do, but yet there are parents that do it.
Yeah, and you usually hear the same things. Well, at least I know where they're at. We had an incident over the summer where a parent, and we looked to, we're still investigating this because a huge fight broke out at one of those parties where the parent wanted to be the cool parent and host the party and have everybody over there. And just like things happen, one thing turns to another and an argument happens and a big fight breaks out. And, that was a really violent crew of people that were at that party. And the injuries were minor to somewhat significant, but thank God it wasn't worse. But here she is thinking that she's just the cool parent. I'm going to host a party and everything is going to be okay.
And because I'm here, nothing bad's going to happen.
Right.
I'm hosting it, so I'm going to watch and make sure nothing bad happens.
Foolish.
When you talk about these operations, we talked about the summer operation, a fall break operation. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so we're partnering with Gilbert and Queen Creek ourselves, and we're all have that focus, similar focus that we had with the Safe Summer, because we know that fall break is time off. Time off could equal issues on the weekends and at night and late at night. So we're all, putting extra patrols out for enforcement of not just like party-related calls and juvenile curfew and alcohol and all the same type of categories for teen violence. We're all out there doing that together.
Do you think the kids are getting the message? Their parents probably, but do you think the kids are getting the message that you're out there and that it's nothing? That it's serious. That this can turn into something that changes your life.
I think that 40% reduction we saw shows that reduction isn't by accident. I think they know that we're serious about following up on these things, and they're going to get arrested, and they're going to have to go to court, and we're going to seize their cars, and we're going to take those type of things that are really important to them if they're used in a crime. And I think that's starting to get around, but we can't let that momentum lie. This is something that we're still in collaboration with the courts and the schools and all of our community leaders and probation to make sure that we put something in place that long after we're all gone, this continues and it's not just a flash in the pan.
So how important are those? Do you have SROs in Mesa? And how important is that program with SROs and the relationships with some of the kids in school to get information on what's happening?
Can't say enough about our school resource officers. I could talk about them in a whole nother segment because they are critical. They establish relationships. They build relationships beyond the badge. They get to know the students get to know them. They actually teach curriculum in the schools, and they also are our front line in making sure that violence is subsided. So they are critical to what we do, and they do an outstanding job.
I still remember the school resource officer in my high school, and I graduated in 1985. So they do make an impact. I still remember him, and he worked for the sheriff's office, and I still think he works to some degree. But I'll never forget him. And it was a relationship. He was always on campus. He was always available. He was a friendly face, but he was somebody that you could go to if there was trouble. And I think that was important.
Yeah, it's critical. The fact of what they do, it's almost immeasurable because it's hard to quantify what they've stopped before it's ever even started because kids trust them and they go to them and they say, hey, Officer so-and-so, something's about ready to go down. Here's the deal. These two are going to fight. And, those type of things because they trust them. So think about that for kids. I mean, they got to get to people who trust them. Now, whether it's an officer or a principal or the athletic director or a coach, it's somebody that they need to feel comfortable with to go to and to be able to share this information. And that's the next step, really, is we got to have these kids involved. All the adults and the elected officials and appointed chiefs can do everything they want, but the kids have got to have that buy-in and the belief that they can make a difference and kind of stem this violence.
So last question has to do with growth. The entire valley's exploding in growth, but none bigger than Mesa and what you've seen, the growth you've seen. We talked with a Scottsdale chief the other day about their drone program, not just in patrol cars, but this new big program of theirs. Yeah. Are you using technology, and how is it helping you to keep up with the growth and keep a lid on crime?
So really good friends with Jeff Walther. He's a great guy, great leader. That's an outstanding department, but we're right there with him. We have our real-time crime center up and running. We have our drone and the first responder has been running for a few months now. It's responded to over 200 calls, most of them under a minute, and get on scene before the officer even is starting to drive toward the call, and then pipe in that live video to help them. Not only beneficial for the community, but beneficial for the officer and officer safety. And our real-time crime center, I feel, is second to none. And it's only second to none because of what we learned from everybody, not just in the Valley, but nationwide. And it's been open for over a year plus, and it helped us solve a homicide yesterday, a terrible call at Senator McKellips in our city that was a homicide. And using that technology, had that suspect in custody within minutes of that crime, which is just absolutely incredible.
Yeah, and we appreciate so much what you do. I am such a proponent and such a supporter of law enforcement because I come from a family and I understand it's difficult work protecting people. Your families go through a lot knowing it's a dangerous job, but you do it in such a professional way. And I think it's not just what you do, but how you do it. So if you'll pass that along to your officers, I just commend you for the work you do, but also in the professional manner you do it.
Yeah, will do, and I appreciate that support as always. Thanks, Mike.
All right, that's the chief from the city of Mesa.
Thanks for watching the Mike Broomhead Show. Catch up on Amazing Arizonans, a KTAR News podcast, and click the button in the middle to subscribe.